Hello everybody and welcome to this Parallel Project Training Lunch and Learn session. My name is Ruth Phillips. I'm the Head of Training Delivery at Parallel and I'm really delighted that you can join us today. We're going to go through what's new with the APM PMQ qualification, and I'm joined by my colleague Carmen Campos, who's one of Parallel's senior training consultants, and she's going to take you through all of the content. We'd love you to ask any questions that you've got. If you could put those into the comments box, and then we'll take all of those at the end of this session. So that's all from me for the moment. Over to you, Carmen.
Thank you very much, Ruth, and thank you for the introduction. Hello and welcome, everybody. We have been having a lot of questions about the new PMQ, and we thought it would be a good idea to run this session and trying to clarify what exactly has changed with the new PMQ exam. So we've sort of covered the same topics. We're going to look at, first of all, what is the PMQ, because we appreciate we may have people listening today who may not know where does the PMQ fit within the other qualifications. But more specifically, we're going to talk about the new PMQ itself. So we will do a bit of a comparison between the old and the new PMQ, and then talk through each of these specific changes. So we're going to show you what is in the new syllabus, we're going to show you the new type of questions, the exam structure itself, and the timings for this transition. After that, we will give you some insights and some tips on what you need to do to prepare well for this exam, and talk you through all the different options that Parallel Project Training provides you to support with the preparation for this new exam. And then we'll finish up with a round of questions and answers. But as Ruth said, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to just put them in the chat and we will make sure we address all of them towards the end. So on that note, let's begin with what is the project management qualification. So some of you are familiar with the APM, the Association for Project Management. You will know that they offer a range of different qualifications, and the choice of the qualification primarily will be dependent on where you are in your career. So depending on where you are, in what stage you are, there is a number of qualifications that gives you a nice route towards the charter status, which is the highest standard. The PMQ in particular is a knowledge-based qualification, which is aimed for people who already have some experience in project management. So the expectation is someone with about 2 to 3 years project experience who just want to formalize and consolidate the knowledge and understanding of project management principles and skills will probably be thinking of this qualification. This is a very widely recognized qualification, and it always has been a very valuable certificate to have. In fact, from September as well, the PMQ will become one of these recognized assessments that people could use as a nice path into chartership. But today, the focus of the session is really to explore what is new in the PMQ. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to give you a high-level comparison of what is different. So some of you may have done the PMQ before or thinking about preparing for it. So just as a high level, the key differences are the syllabus. The content in the previous PMQ exam was based on the APM Body of Knowledge 7th edition, whereas the new PMQ syllabus will be aligned with the APM competence framework. This in itself is not a drastic change. So both of them the body of knowledge and the competence framework speak the same language, they don't contradict each other. What it means in terms of the exam is that the structure of the syllabus will be based on those competencies from the competence framework. And I will explain in a moment what that means. The other key change is the exam format and the structure. Before, if you sit the PMQ exam, you will have to answer 10 questions within 3 hours and 15 minutes, and you have to do it all on one sitting. Now, in the new exam, the exam duration is shorter, and also the exam is split into two parts. So between the two parts, you could take a break if you wish to, up to 30 minutes. So I think that's a positive change. The other change is that the type of questions has changed. Before, all these 10 questions require long answers. So for each of them, you will have to type a number of paragraphs. Whereas now, the format is a mix of 4 different type of questions. Another key difference is the pass mark. In the current Zoom All PMQ, to pass the exam, you need to score overall 55% or more. And now, going forward, the new exam has an adjusted pass mark. So what that means is, depending on the difficulty of the paper, the pass mark will vary. Okay. There's some other subtle changes which are probably worth pointing out. So one of the changes are the guidelines and recommendation for who is suitable to do this qualification. Before, although there was some information about it, there was no clear specific guidance of who is this aimed at. Now there is more information, there is much more clear guidance as to who is this qualification targeted to. And essentially, people with at least 2 years of experience is the recommended candidate. But I want to make very, very clear that this is just a recommendation. This is not a prerequisite. It's treated just as a guideline to have at least 2, 3 years of experience to get the best out of this qualification. So these are the sort of high-level key differences. Let's now delve into each of them in more detail. Beginning with the first one, the content. So I mentioned before that the new syllabus is now aligned with the APM competence framework. For those of you not familiar with the APM's competence framework, what it does is it sets out what are the key competencies that are necessary for good and effective project, program, and portfolio management. So what they did is, out of these total of 29 competencies in the framework, they pull out 24 which are applicable to project management more specifically. So the other 5 are probably more relevant to program or portfolio management. So things like resource capacity planning or financial planning are out of the PMQ. And what they did is, for those 24 competencies, they structured it in 4 sections. So that way it tells you a bit of a story. So from the 4 sections, you have 24 learning objectives, which are your 24 competencies from the framework. And each of these learning objectives will contain a number of learning outcomes. That forms the basis of the assessment. So these are those 73 things, are the things you need to demonstrate, because the questions in the exam will be derived from that list of 73 learning outcomes. So you can imagine now that because the syllabus is based on the competence framework, there are new topics that have been introduced to the examination. So those of you who prepared for this exam before may notice that in the presentation there are new topics that now appear in the new exam. So these 4 things: sustainability, transition management, diversity and inclusion, and ethics, compliance, and professionalisms, are things that were not in the previous exam. I suspect they are not completely new topics to people, so I assume people have some level of familiarity in those topics anyway. And we think it's a positive change because they're very important topics when you are working with teams and managing projects. So these are the new topics. Now, sometimes people ask if something has been taken out from the exam. So the short answer is no, nothing has been removed from the exam. So all the work that you have done, if you were preparing towards the previous qualification, still apply. However, the emphasis and the focus of each of the topics has changed slightly. In particular, there are some of these learning objectives that have considerable different emphasis. And what I mean by that is that some of them cover in more detail, some of them have less emphasis. So it's quite important to note that if you are preparing under the previous version or you did the exam under the previous version and you're thinking of resitting, and the ones you can see now in purple are the ones that have considerable different emphasis. Just to give you an example, so for example, if you look at schedule management, you don't need to describe in so much detail how do you get from work breakdown structure all the way into critical path. It gets covered at higher level. You don't need to demonstrate in detail all the different types of estimating techniques. On the other hand, other topics, like for example budgeting and cost control, are now explored in much more depth, whereas before maybe they were covered at more high level. So if someone is thinking of, you know, sitting in the new exam, it's very important that you understand what those changes are. From the 24 learning objectives that you see there, each of them will have a number of things that you need to demonstrate in the exam, just to show you the difference between learning objectives and learning outcomes. So if you pick resource management as one of the learning objectives, the syllabus contains a number of outcomes that you need to demonstrate. So if you get a question in the exam, the question will be derived from those of them. So what we thought we could do is we could show you as well what does it mean in terms of the questions that you may have in the exam. So as explained briefly in the introduction, now you have 40 questions that you need to complete. The bad news is that now you cannot choose. So in the previous exam, from 16 questions, you will have to select 10. Now you have to do all of them. But the good news is that we have a variety of different questions. So the exam paper will have 20 out of the 40 that will be multiple choice. Essentially, they give you a statement or a question, and you have to select the correct answer out of 4. It's very similar, if you're familiar with the PFQ, it's very similar to the PFQ type of exam questions. And if you get it right, you get 1 mark. If you get it wrong, you get no marks. The second type of question is called select from the list. So in the exam, there will be 5 questions where they give you some information and some of the words are missing from the sentences. So what you have to do is fill those gaps by selecting one of the plausible options that are selected from that list. And the score you get on that one is up to 2 marks. The other type of questions is a short answer. So there are 5 questions in the exam which only require a very short answer, 2 or 3 words, or possibly very short statement. And those account for up to 2 marks. And finally, long answer type of questions. So very similar to the long answers that we used to do in the previous qualification, but the difference, and I think it's a positive difference, is that now there is more guidance. So you will have to write a paragraph or a number of paragraphs about the question, and it gives you a little bit of a steer of what are the things that you need to make sure you type in your answers. So these type of questions account for up to 5 marks. In total, maximum marks will be 90 marks out of the 40 questions. But as I said, the pass mark will vary depending on the difficulty of the paper. So these are the 4 question types. Now let's do a bit of practice. So let's put this into practice, and I encourage people to try to do a bit of a test. I won't put anyone on the spot. We're gonna do some practice so you could see what a typical question may look like. Let's begin with the first one, multiple choice. So the question says, you are a project manager introducing a new HR platform, and you need to undertake initial communication with employees to create awareness and engagement in the project. Which one is the most appropriate approach? So I'm going to pause here. If anyone brave enough wants to put your answers, or if not, try to think which one could be the possible answer. I'll give you a moment to read all the options. Right, so let's reveal the answer. So the answer is D. Invite all employees to a series of webinars. And the good thing about these questions is that it will be clear, it's right or wrong. There is no ambiguity or difference of interpretation. Let's do some practice on the second type. So the second type is select from list. So as you can see now, they give you a statement, and there's some bits missing from the question. So what you need to do is to fill the gaps. Reading the question, it says, taking the time to structure a comprehensive communication plan will deliver many benefits. One of them being to ensure, and one of the options from the list, a further benefit of the communication plan to the project is to ensure, and then you need to fill the gap with one of the options from D. So let's see how that one goes. Okay, so the correct answer is for A, being number 3, target audiences are defined, and for B, it would be number 1, consistent messaging. So that means if you got both right, you get 2 marks in the exam. If you only get 1 right, you get 1, and if you get all of them wrong, you get 0 marks. Okay, so you can imagine now, just from that example, it's already much more accessible. It doesn't really rely on people having to write all the time long answers against the clock. Just for completeness, I'll give you an example of the other 2 types. So in the short response, we have a question here that says, you have received a change request during a project that you are managing. List 2 pieces of information you will require during planning the detailed evaluation stage of the process. So these type of questions can get you up to 2 marks. And if you get the 2 pieces of information correctly, you score maximum marks. If you get 1 correctly, you get 1 mark. None of them will give you 0 marks. So sometimes the answer may be just 1 word, sometimes it may be a couple of words, or as a maximum, it will be a short statement. And the last one, again, to exemplify what type of questions you may have if you have a long answer response, is this one. So you're given a situation, software companies creating a new mobile application, and they're exploring different options, so using a linear versus iterative. What considerations should they give on how the risk management process in the identification stage will differ? So in the previous exam, if some of you remember, the question was posed and there was no further clarification. The new exam now will give you some hints as to what things you need to consider to be on the right track. So in this type of questions, what is required is a paragraph making sure that you cover not only the answer of the question, but you have considered those hints. So it gives you a really good steer. Okay, so this is what a strong answer will look on these type of questions. So we talk about the changes in the syllabus, we talk about the changes in the different type of questions. Let's look at the exam itself. So the new exam now, as I mentioned, has two parts. The total time is 2.5 hours and is split into two sections. So if you wish, when you finish your first section, you can take up to 30 minutes break before you're ready to commence the second part. Okay, and again, if we think about accessibility, this is much more accessible because it gives you time to have breaks. You could use it for whatever you want to use it, even if you just want to do another crash revision. But the most important thing, for obvious reasons, is that once you complete the first part, you cannot go back. So remember to make sure that you read carefully everything you've done before you're ready to finish the first section, because at that point, once you've done it, it will be too late. You cannot modify anything you've written before. And then obviously, again, because you cannot go back, you will have, for remote examinations, you will have the remaining time to complete the second part. The sections will have a balance of different question types. So for each of the sections, they try to even the type of questions, and each of the parts of the exam comprise 20. So you do 20 questions with a variety of question types, and after the break, you do the remaining 20. So what happens when there is still opportunity if someone still wants to sit on the current PMQ exam to do so. The last exam to sit the PMQ exam will be by the end of the month. And if you're doing it with us, the last opportunity to prepare exam prep and to sit the exam with parallel project training will be on the 19th of August. The new exam will be launched on the 3rd of September. In fact, we already started our first course on the 5th of August. The parallel project team has worked incredibly hard to be able to run courses in August and give people the opportunity to sit the exam in September. So this is now in the pipeline. If you are interested in looking at what's the next available course under the new syllabus is available, that is on the 12th of September. So we still have some spaces available for the next course. People who did the exam perhaps this summer and didn't go very well, but they still want to resit under the old syllabus before everything else change. You need to be aware that the absolute last cutoff day to resit the exam will be before the 8th of October. After that, it will have to be the new PMQ exam. So now I want to share with you some insights and some tips as to how best prepare for this new PMQ exam. A good starting point could be to go to the APM website and start checking some of the reference material. The APM provides a learning packs, I think they call it, which gives you all the key essential information in terms of guidance for the exam, content to prepare for it. So that's a good starting point. You could also buy the Parallel Project Training Study Guide, which is now available. It's been released, which covers everything that is contained in the Learner's Pack, but then explore all these topics in far more detail to give you a really good understanding of each of the learning outcomes. We also have e-learning options, so people who may want to prepare that distance learning and listen to our podcast, they're really good resources to prepare well for the exam. But my personal recommendation is to try to do as much practice as possible. To try to practice as many questions, exams as you could. And if you decided to book a tutor-led course with us, you don't need to worry about everything else because it's all included. So the tutor-led course will include you study guide, access to our e-learning containing videos, quizzes, plenty of questions for you to practice, podcasts, and also a lot of coaching as well as the tutor-led courses, coaching on how to practice this exam technique. So this is a range of material that is provided to prepare well for this exam. If you want to know about the options that Parallel provides, whether you're sitting for the first time or you're thinking of resitting, there are a number of things to choose from. If this is the first time that you sit in this exam, you can either enroll into our distance learning program or take a exam prep webinar. Okay, you could also enroll in one of our 6 weeks course. So we split the course into 1 day per week to allow delegates to reflect on the topics, practice questions, and also get feedback from your tutor. So the last week of the course will be your exam. And it's a really good way to prepare little by little and try really to explore the topics in more detail. If you are one of those individuals who did the exam back at the time but didn't go very well, perhaps you find the format very tricky, writing very quickly, typing very quickly, exams under the clock. This new exam format is probably going to be a really good change for you. So if you are in that category, there are also a number of options. So we offer a one-off conversion PMQ course, which is booked on the 30th of September. So this is a crash course, 3 days, covering all the things that are new with the new exam, offering you some coaching on exam technique, and really try to fill all the gaps that you may have. We also recommend, even if you have done the course in the past, due to all these changes that the new syllabus encompass, we recommend you take a full course again. And at the moment, we're currently offering some limited discounted spaces for people who is joining the course again, but they already sit and they just want to receive in the new format and cover all these changes. So, whichever package you are interested in, all of them include a copy of the study guide, the Parallel Project study guide, access to videos and practice exercise in the e-learning, and it also covers the exam booking. However, this is a very personal choice. So if you have any questions or you are unsure which option works better for you depending on your particular circumstances, please do feel free to reach out after this webinar and contact us for more information. So what we've done is we've put a QR code as well if people want to know more about our blog post or people want to see the next available courses. And Ruth also put that as well in the banners, all the contact information if you want to discuss or want to get more clarity of all the training support options to prepare for this exam. So on that note, I would like to thank everyone for coming and joining us today. And now we open the floor to all the questions in the chat. I will leave that on in case people wants to take a shot of the QR code. Great, over to you, Ruth.
Fantastic, Carmen. Thank you so much. And I think everyone will agree that's a really comprehensive look at the new APM PMQ and the changes that are being made. So we've had a few questions come in, Carmen. So you mentioned at the beginning of what you were talking about that there's been a change in kind of focus of the syllabus, that the previous exam was aligned with box 7 and the new exam is now aligned to the APM competence framework. So somebody's asked, do you see there being an issue with global recognition of the qualification by moving away from box 7?
Could you repeat the question for me? So do I see it's been an issue With the global,
with global recognition of the qualification now that it's moving away from box 7.
And just for clarity, so the box 7 is still the master. So the box 7 gives the whole holistic view. So don't throw in the bin. It's still going to be the master, and it's a very essential resource that people should use. But in preparation for the exam, the competence framework will be the way that this particular exam is structured. So competence framework, it focuses on skills. It's about building skills, capabilities, building competence. So they're not contradictory. They're both important. What that means is that if you want to prepare for this exam, you need to follow the sort of structure of the framework. So, and as a matter of fact, the APM is not discontinuing anything in any shape or form. So they're already preparing the 8th edition of the body of knowledge. So that absolutely doesn't devalue the body of knowledge. It still remains what it is. What it means is if you're preparing for the exam, you need to now think about the content in terms of those skills that you need to build up. And it also aligns quite well with the assessment of the charter status, because the charter competencies are also based on the third version of the competence framework. So if hopefully that answered your question, it doesn't devalue anything on the body of knowledge. It still serves the same purpose. It's just a different lenses. So the course is now going to be structured in a different way.
Fantastic, excellent. Okay, so the next question then is around the study guide. So somebody's asked, where can they find that? I can't see an option on the Parallel website. So how does somebody get their hands on the Parallel study guide, Carmen?
So that will be if you book on the self-study pack or the distance learning at the moment. And if you're interested just in getting the study guide, contact us to those details that you see in the banner. But we typically recommend to have it as a package, because the study guide will be very useful to prepare. But the advantage of having also the e-learning and the podcast is that you don't need to have the book with you. You could just listen to the information wherever you are. So from experience, majority of our candidates tend to take that as a package. But saying that, is not limited to that. So if you're just interested in getting the study guide, contact this number or that email address, and then we will advise you on how to get one.
That's great. And just to go back to what you were saying about the podcasts and the other learning tools that we provide, we've also had a really nice comment come in saying, I can confirm Parallel training podcasts help me pass my exam, which help put the information against the modules in perspective. So that's some lovely feedback as well. That's great.
That's great to hear.
Okay, so a little bit now about the exam. What's the expected wait time for exam results? And do you just get a pass or a fail?
So it's a really good question, because up until now, the expected time was between 8 to 10 weeks. My understanding is that this waiting time will still remain, but it's indicative. So as a maximum, you will expect to hear at least by 8 to 10 weeks. But obviously, this is quite recent. It's a bit of a learning curve for everyone. So I wouldn't be surprised if the very first few exams are getting closer to that end limit. As a good rule of thumb, I would say anything between 8 to 10 weeks as an approximation.
Yeah, and then it's a pass or a fail that you're informed of for that.
Yes. So you get your resource communicated directly to you with pass and a fail, and a just high level breakdown of your marks.
Perfect, excellent. We've got another question around the body of knowledge now. How does the 8th edition differ from the version 7 that you were talking about?
This is very early days to be able to answer that question. So the preparation has just started. So we will know that in more detail in due course. It was just a way to reassure people that this is still a very, very precious resource. So I don't know on the top of my head the time scales for that. But once that happened, we could perhaps run another event and clarify a bit more on those changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to reassure you about the 8th edition, I believe that the chapters are currently going through their first review, so it's not something that's imminent. But the structure of the new PMQ exam, the syllabus for the new PMQ exam will not change, and that's one of the benefits that it's been allied to the competence framework. So it's slightly independent from the box. So that's a good thing. There won't be a wholesale change when the 8th edition of the BOK comes out.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Right, so I've got another question then, a little bit about logistics. People saying that, first of all, they would like to do a conversion course, but they self-studied for the PMQ, which unfortunately they failed. Would they still be eligible to come along to the conversion course in that situation?
Yes, absolutely. So at the moment, we offer one of the courses, but it's based on demand. So if we have a lot of interest and people wants to do it, we will provide more future available courses. So yes, definitely, as it's a really good option.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Another one now about the exam and eligibility. So is there a shorter exam if you have previous qualifications, e.g. Prince 2, as there was for the old one?
Unfortunately, no. So for the benefit of everyone, in the previous exam, you have an option if you already hold a Prince to Practitioner qualification to have a reduced exam. That now has been removed from the new exam. So in the new exam is exactly the same regardless whether you have Prince 2 or no. So I'm afraid the answer to that is no, it still remains the same.
Good news is, though, it's a slightly shorter exam anyway, so
Yes,
there's there's a benefit there at least.
yes.
Okay, we've got another question here. Is the PMQ an acceptable qualification to start the likes of an MSc, a Master's in Project Management? What do you think about that, Carmen?
Well, I think it is. It is a useful qualification to that. Just to put it into perspective, so if you think about comparison between the PMQ in the sense of the framework of qualifications, this is equivalent to kind of a first year undergraduate degree. So in the regulated scheme, the RQF is like level 4, which I think is the equivalence of the Scottish level 7. So it's kind of like very, very similar level. And if you do the PMQ, that could be a good foundation to progress maybe um, any master's degree in project management. So it's not particular order, but just to hopefully just to put it into perspective of what is the equivalent of the difficulty of the PMQ. And I appreciate that may not answer the question, but at least you could sort of like compare, and it does sort of make sense to do the PMQ first and then do more and further studies on that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Right, okay. I don't think there are any more questions that have come through for the moment, Carmen. So I think we'll bring the lunch and learn session to an end. Thank you very much, Carmen, for all of your knowledge and the way that you've presented all of that. And thank you very much to everybody that has attended. I hope it's been useful for you. Please do get in contact with us. You've seen our contact details up on the screen for a while. Do contact us if you've got any questions at all. We'd be delighted to talk to you about that. So that remains for me to say, have a great Friday afternoon and a lovely weekend. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.